Humans, we are born inquisitive. We've learned from trial and error. Mostly errors. It's amazing we made it this far. Even with our little and not so little blunders. That's the beauty of it. When we mess up, we help each other get back up. Keep trying. It's progress. Fairfirst is sure to give you a hand when you need one.
So go on, give it a try.
Aibowan, Vanakkam, Assalamu Alaikum, and good evening to everybody. Welcome to the third AmCham Sri Lanka Bounce Back SL online discussion brought to you in partnership with Fairfirst Insurance and the Daily FT. Now, as you know, this series of online discussions is themed, created, and curated to bring you information, empirical insights, analysis, and in-depth knowledge on topics that are really relevant, important, and immediately impactful to you in crafting your business recovery on a sustainable, upward trajectory, and as we move forward facing the challenges that not just COVID-19, but the universe will bring us. We here at AmCham Sri Lanka, in collaboration, of course, with our series partner Fairfirst Insurance and the Daily FT, are pleased to be your most trusted knowledge partner in supporting your journey to establish your new niche in a new world order. Now, over the past 3 weeks, we've set the stage for this bounce back conversation through first examining a SWOT analysis of 4 verticals, the economy, the medical snapshot, the psychosocial snapshot, and of course, the geopolitical snapshot. This helped us to establish the status quo of the business environment and identify the strengths and opportunities the Sri Lankan business community could harness. Last week, we spoke about agility and repurposing in your business model to pivot into the evolving needs of consumers and, of course, delivery platforms that seem to have gone streaks ahead overnight. Now, don't forget, of course, if you missed these last 2 sessions, you can catch up on our YouTube channel, AmCham Sri Lanka. And I encourage you to do that because it will help you in sort of the continuity of this conversation that we're taking across. Today, in the third of this series, we'll be talking about leadership. Leading and inspiring a metamorphosis of your most valuable asset, your human capital, your team. How do you inspire an upskilling or even a reskilling to suit the evolving needs of the role? How do you manage and lead a team of cross-generational knowledge, resource, and talent? How do you inspire when fear and uncertainty are the words of the day? How do you even job craft maybe to optimize the productivity of a particular talent or capability? Well, as the saying goes, work is something we do and not somewhere we go. And of course, productivity is not a measure of desk time, but a measure of results. So let's dive right in and see what our panelists have to say on this topic. Manjari Kumarage is the head of human resources and facilities management for Fairfirst Insurance. She is understandably a human capital specialist, starting her career in HCM in 2007. Manjari is an alumnus of the University of Wales, where she obtained her Masters of Business Administration in 2013. Imani Pereira, Head of Learning and Development for John Keel's Group, has worked in HR, marketing and management consulting in multiple sectors, ranging from manufacturing to leisure, financial services, information technology, and various. And with, of course, a passion for organizational and human capital development, she currently heads the learning and development for John Keel's Group, formulating people development strategies and learning solutions for its diverse businesses. Sarinda Unambua needs very little introduction, CEO of Mars Creda and a member of the MAS Apparel Board. Prior to this, he was a banker, stockbroker, and headed a supermarket chain. He's a committed conservationist and a champion of environmental sustainability and sits on MAS's Sustainability Steering Committee. A committed change agent, he has been one of the driving forces behind Work From Anywhere initiative that MAS, and a strong advocate of flexible work policies and, of course, empowering women in leadership roles. Sarinda has walked the length of Sri Lanka twice and ridden a bicycle around Sri Lanka 4 times to raise money for 2 separate charities that he co-founded, Trail and Wheels for Wheels. He is a published wildlife photographer and is passionate about physical fitness and believes a healthy, active body is key to a healthy and creative mind. An interesting conversation we're going to be having there with Sarinda, because I think that he has a lot to share in how you balance and inspire your human capital. Of course, your moderator for this evening's discussion, Niro Cook. Niro is the Group Director on the main board of the Capital Maharaja Organization, Sri Lanka's largest privately owned conglomerate. Having been educated in the United Kingdom, Niro is an alumnus of the Regent's Business School in London with a BA in International Business, and he brings an international perspective to business in Sri Lanka. Niro is actively involved in developing large-scale government infrastructure and energy projects in Sri Lanka, which he has been doing since 2007, and is passionate about sustainable development and transforming Sri Lanka's economy into a competitive and sustainably industrialized one that adds value to the global supply chain. I'm Rai Raymond, General Manager ED of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, creator and facilitator of this series. Niro, over to you to take us through what I personally am extremely excited to promise will be a very interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Rai. A very warm welcome to everyone, and a very, very special thank you to Rai for bringing together these eminent panelists so that we all have the opportunity to hear from them and share vital knowledge at this critical time. As Rai mentioned, the subject of today's discussion is inspiring metamorphosis. And for those of you who missed O-level biology like me, metamorphosis is the process of change. Over the years, I think we can all attest to the fact that the only constant has been change, and that we must change or be changed. And to explore this vast subject, I take enormous pleasure in introducing our panelists: Sarinder, Managing Director and CEO of Mas Krida; Imani Pereira, Head of Learning and Development of John Keel's Group; Manjari Kumarage, Head of Human Resources and Facilities Management at Fairfirst Insurance. Without further delay, I'd like to invite our first panelist to make their statement, and that is Sarinder. Following your statement, we'll have a few questions from myself, and we'll move on to the next panelist. Sarinder?
Hi, Niro. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. So the question today is the difference between being a manager and being a leader, and the actual evolution of leadership. Firstly, I think when you talk about being a manager, it is more about controlling and dictating and kind of setting a set of rules, almost what people need to follow. Whereas in the current day and age, I think what is needed is leadership. Leadership is more about empowering people, about guiding people, and allowing people to use their creativity, and they're giving them the flexibility and the muscle to be able to do the job to the best of their abilities. I think this is going to be a big step for many people. And while lots of people think that this is a transition for people as they get older, I don't believe it is so. I think it just has to do with the mindset. We come from a very hierarchical culture. So changing that mindset is something that we really have to pay attention to. So I think leadership is something that we should all aspire to be leaders and not just managers.
Sarinder, thanks very much. So I want to talk a little bit about leadership versus management. I mean, you mentioned that a manager sets rules and then expects everyone to follow them, and a leader really inspires people. Historically, leadership traits have been based on varying leadership styles, but they were mostly seen to be decisive, perhaps a little authoritarian, data-driven. And today we look at leaders needing to be more candid, consistent communication, flexible, empathetic. Are they two different types of people, or can the same person become a leader? Can a manager become a leader, is the question.
I think a manager can definitely become a leader. I think awareness is the main thing that we have to pay attention to, Niro, because a lot of us have grown up in, as I said before, in very hierarchical societies. Everything was dictated to us. When we went to school, everything was dictated. We never got to, question the teachers too much. You never spoke back. At home, you came, you put your buttons on and combed your hair when you had hair. When you sat at the dining table, there was always rules and regulations that we followed. And what's happened now is it has become a far more democratized kind of work environment. Especially what's happened in the last 3 to 4 months. We have had to allow our teams to work without the kind of scrutiny and control that we have traditionally had in our office environment to an extreme extent. We have had to let people work from a home environment or anywhere that they were comfortable working from, and expect to have their work done. There's still a lot of control that you can put in, But I think the kind of flexibility that we have been able to adapt to shows that any environment can change. The sad thing is I see lots of people quickly running back to exactly how the work environment used to be. This is something that I think awareness, self-awareness, as well as awareness of your style of management is something that is very, very important. Lots of people tend to be very quick to judge and observe how somebody else's management style is or how somebody else does something. They don't really look at themselves. And invariably, if you look at the characteristics that really drive you nuts about somebody else, you'll find that you may have some of that as well. So I think first, self-awareness, what's your style of management? What is the leadership style that's going to work best in your organization? And how do you empower people to really bring out the creativity and that element of trust is very, very vital. So I think that is something that there are a multitude of articles and papers written on this subject. So it's not something that we've got to kind of figure it out on our own. But it is definitely something that we should aspire to go towards, because I believe it brings out the best in your team. I believe it brings out a lot of creativity, and it really makes people feel valued in it.
Without delving too deep into this early on, I want to ask you if you think now I know that you think work from anywhere is the answer, not necessarily work from home or work from office, to have the flexibility to decide. And I've experienced that there are some young people who don't like working at home, who really prefer to work in office. They find themselves more productive. And then there are older people who I would have expected to prefer working from office in a structured environment, actually really enjoying working from home. So I'm not sure if you fall into the older people category, but and I do agree with you. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule for everyone. But do you think that the more relaxed working atmosphere, the more not necessarily relaxed atmosphere, but the found with less rules, do you think that it requires a higher level of consciousness of the people that you're working with? Or do you think that consciousness evolves as a result of being given the responsibility?
I think the word I would like to use is conscientiousness, where people really have to be committed to delivering what they're expected to deliver. The whole work from anywhere policy that we're bringing in the organization has a couple of things that I'd like to just highlight here. One is it's not 100% work from anywhere kind of rule. There are 2 days that you need to, 2 days a week that if you want to come to an office environment, that you can come to the office environment. So it's a mix of being able to go into office if you so desire, or work from home, remote location, another group location, or anywhere. I mean, if you want to take your family and go to Pasikuta and you don't want to take your leave, as long as you're available for calls, conference calls, whatever it may be, and get your work done during the office hours, then it doesn't matter to us where you work from. There is also, for those of us who want to get to the work environment and get our teams together, there are 2 days of the week that we are planning on opening the offices. That's one aspect. One is you're giving people the flexibility and the time. The other thing is that you're reducing your real estate requirement, because we are only bringing like 50% of our teams in at any given time. We are rostering it in such a way that the team will be split in 2, and teams will be brought in 50% on one day, 50% on another day, on alternate weeks. So basically what you're doing is you're reducing the real estate requirement by almost 50% in most cases. So there's a massive saving on real estate, especially for companies that are renting huge space. The other thing is you're reducing your carbon footprint. Your emissions come down in half because your transportation is cut down dramatically. So there are lots of savings for the organization. Those that give food and beverages to their members of their teams, that's another saving as well. So there are huge areas of saving, and what we're taking those savings and giving people better connectivity. If they need, office furniture, whatever they may need to make their home environments more conducive to working, we're helping them with those things. So this is an evolution. This is a journey that we are going down. And I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error. We are just starting this. The note came out today, for example. So it's very, very new. This is something that we have been working towards. It's an evolution, and I'm really excited by it. I really look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Sarinder. I think this subject is something that we'd like to go in further into detail later on in the conversation. I'm going to move on to the next panelist to make their opening remarks. Imani Pereira, would you mind making your opening remarks, and we'll move on to the questions immediately afterwards. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Niro. So the question to me is the importance of retraining, upskilling workforce in the wake of this pandemic and encouraging mindfulness. So first of all, let me just touch on the retraining and upskilling part of things. Just to dovetail based on what Sarinder mentioned, yes, we had got used to certain ways in which we felt we needed to work and how we should work, and maybe coming into the corporate sector, you feel that there is a way in which you should sort of adapt to how you should follow things, and you would have had certain ways in which you had got used to in terms of work. So part of the retraining and upskilling first is also the unlearning part, the what you have got used to. How do you sort of dissect it? How do you unlearn to understand the ways in which you can build on the newer trends, and how can you internalize it on a regular basis? So first of all, it's that unlearning process, which takes it's a lot of thinking from one's own perspective, first of all, to understand what are the areas that you really need to hone on and change. And this is, whilst we look at things a lot in terms of the employee's point of view, supervisors also need to sort of look at it from how they're managing teams. And I think Sarinder mentioned in terms of if we had been used to getting everyone in our teams to meet each other in the mornings face to face, and we sort of get a kick out of meeting everyone face to face. We need to learn that we can do that, but we need to find alternate ways of getting it. So we get that same high, but maybe not the fact that everyone is in one place, right? So that way of looking at the alternate means and understanding what are the ways in which we need to upskill ourselves in this sense. So upskilling and relearning is nothing new. We had been anticipating sort of a digital revolution of things, and into 2018 when sort of Forbes put out their economic review, they mentioned that very soon we would have so many roles that will be replaced in terms of automation. So it's not something that was new. We knew that we need to reskill, we knew we need to upskill. But what happened here is we might have been thinking of the upskilling and the retraining in a business as usual mode. And here now we see that it took a paradigm shift in terms of us now looking at different business models, going into things that we might never have sort of gone in before. So for example, in our retail operation, we overnight had to scale up to moving into an online platform, which we might have parked before in terms of really pursuing. So how do we get our people onto this in a matter of a shorter period of time? So that sort of, it's not business as usual because the models have changed. And how are we going to reskill our workforce, retrain them, and get them to unlearn some of the older ways that they were used to working to adapt to this new normal? So that's the sort of retraining and unskilling that I would like to touch on.
Thank you very much, Imani. Just a couple of quick follow-up questions. During the lockdowns and in the wake of this pandemic, what do you think were the most vital skills that you wanted to impart into the workforce?
Yeah, so one thing, I think that comes as no stranger, and I think everyone would concur to this, is the fact that IT skills in terms of, I know our IT departments all around have been singing the praises of MS Teams and Zoom and all for the longest time, and we've just, like we sometimes do, we've ignored it. But when this happened, we all sort of went back to the to sort of ate a little bit of humble pie and went back to them and said, okay, train us, get us on board on this as soon as possible. And so the IT skills and the tools and techniques rather than the IT skill is what I think is one of the core skills that everyone needed to sort of come on board with. So from learning how to present on a sort of a Zoom platform, to know how to sort of get collaboration working better on MS Teams, knowing that you needed to do your meetings, etc. in these modes is something, and that you could continue your daily work using this not as something that will sort of hinder your work experience, but actually complement it. So that is what one of the pivotal skills. And the other thing is in terms of how supervisors sort of manage their teams, in terms of the skills required for that, in terms of even follow-up. Sarinder mentioned that if you are going to be paranoid and if you're going to be thinking, okay, I don't see this fellow, I don't know what he's doing, I have no idea, I'm sure he's just dodging, then you're going to not be able to do any sort of, you'll be a stressful leader. So then what is required is that you give that element of trust, but at the same time you have check-ins that are required. You come in, you make sure that those are checked, and then you leave the rest to the accomplishment of the task.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Imani. I'm going to move on to our next panelist, Manjari. Would you mind making your opening statements, and then we'll move on. Go ahead, Manjari.
Right. So actually, when the topic is inspiring metamorphosis, which when you talk about this topic, my first concept, what we need to understand is changing itself. The fact that it is both unpredictable, and usually those things comes with its own set of complications which we have never experienced, maybe never heard about it. What I believe is COVID and the past situation that we passed recent last 3-2 months, it wasn't really our biggest challenge. Yes, it's true, it's impacted towards the world and our little country, all our businesses, all our operation, our culture, individuals, but what I believe is biggest challenge that we experience as a company when we inception of Fairfirst, because Fairfirst is quite a new company with a lot of changes and challenges. Our brand, Fairfirst brand, came to the insurance industry, just 5 years, amalgamating 2 large insurance companies in the country, both which had 30 years of long-standing value. Those 2 companies, they had different cultures, they have different practices, which is unique for them, and were both independent in their operations. Getting those 2 cultures together and change each and every individual who came to our organization and creating a brand new culture was our biggest change. So this is what we need to, we always take as example when we do all our businesses. Whenever change takes place, there are some certain of nervousness or the resistance are coming. It happens all the time. During the COVID situation also, when the government imposed some changes and rules and regulations, the resistance came, and we all struggled and we all went through that hassle. As a company as well as a person, I understand this situation very well. Just imagine if someone comes to you and let's say start trying to change your behavior, then you will get very angry or you will get very uneasy. This is the same empathy that we render towards our workforce at all the times. In this situation also, we we are in a change. It's important and understand their concerns and questions. That's what we basically look at in this situation. So we wanted to hear from each and every employee who work with us and from their families as well. So we can't say that, we can't say that question is not important, this is not relevant to this particular situation. So we can't simply ignore those things. We need to listen to them, respect them, and we need to find out what the main point that we need to, which always troubles them. We always staying with our brand values, and we start approaching by being empathetic. We went across the country and met each and every single person of the organization, and we spoke to them personally. And our authenticity was demonstrated when we did clear all the doubts by being very upfront on what going to be happen in past, and currently we do that, continuing to do that.
Okay, Andrea, you mentioned that you went across the country and you interacted with every
Yes.
employee in the organization. How did you do that during that time? Was it you physically met everyone, or?
Yes, we physically met everyone. We spoke to each and every individual of the branch because we have 54 branches around the country, scattered around the country. So there are different social backgrounds, ethnic groups, and all. So they might have different problems when they facing for a change and going through challenges. So we wanted to identify what exactly they have and what exactly they're going to do. So that's how the approach we practiced. And we were very upfront, we were very transparent. We took all the questions and all the concerns they have, and we start solving their problems.
And did you find that there was a significant inertia, unwillingness to change within the organization, or unwillingness to adapt to a new way of working?
Yes, it is, because but people, when they're used to something, they are very comfortable with that situation and they're very comfortable in that particular work schedules. But when we go and change something, as I said you earlier, if somebody comes and disturb you all the time and try to change your habit, and also the resistance are coming. Some people, they naturally absorb, but some are fear, some resist. So those are the things that we face. So as a team, as a leader, and as a HR person, I listen to them very well. Each and every question is important for me.
Okay. Stemming from that, Sarinda, I have a question for you. Manjari mentioned that physical interaction, was important as part of their leadership strategy.
Yeah.
And if you look at most leaders, one-to-one interaction with their teams is very important. Now, with remote working or working from anywhere, the number of interactions or opportunities to interact become, less frequent.
Yes.
So Sarinda, would you be able to give us your insight in how one can remain a good leader with less interaction and working from home?
First, I beg to differ there. I think that is completely changed. That environment is completely changed. The thing is, right now, when you talk about most organizations, let's look at a global organization. Let's take an organization like Unilever or Coca-Cola or anything like that. They're global organizations, they're around the world. How do leaders interact with even the senior most leadership teams on a one-to-one basis? It's done virtually. It's done digitally. So I think what we have to do is get out of the mindset change of having to almost smell the person and touch the person to have that communication. This is communication. We are having the four of us are having a chat, and we are in 4 different locations. So I think what we need to do is really leverage on the kind of technology that is available right now to be able to have that communication even more effectively. Because right now, Niro, take an example of, say, our organization, right? I've got about 9 different locations, actually 11 different locations that we have plants at. And if I try to meet all those people one-to-one on a regular basis, I'll probably visit them twice a year at most. Now I have the opportunity of talking to them twice a week. And I do that sometimes. I'll just get on a video call, or I'll even get on my phone and make a WhatsApp call or a video WhatsApp call and have a chat, because now people have got comfortable with the video conversations that take place. The same quality of conversation can take place with individuals in remote locations if you use technology properly. That one-to-one needs, yes, it's great. I really like the energy transfer and being around people, and all that is fine. But given the environment, given the opportunity provided to us by COVID, I think it's really important that we leverage. Imani brought out a good point. She said there was a lot of training being done to use digital platforms and starting to make that journey towards digitalization. What's happened in the last 3 months is things that were put on 2-year timelines, 3-year timelines got smashed into like 2 weeks. Education, that's a classic example, right? Who thought that universities and schools and everybody would start doing digital education almost on a 100% basis in most cases? Those were things that people thought were 5 years away, 6 years away, 10 years away. All these things have happened. So, Manjari, while I do firmly believe that we need to make contact with our teams and have conversations with them, and more so be accessible, because right now there are lots of issues where people have where they need to talk to you because they need to voice their opinion at a time of so much change. And to be accessible now, we can be accessible to our entire team at any given time. So I firmly believe that this is an opportunity that we can take to increase that connectivity, to increase that one-on-one contact, to increase the communication. I know of an organization which I can't name that we work with very closely, where the CEO now has almost fortnightly meetings with the entire leadership team that has thousands of people. That never happened before. And for the people who sit on that call, one of the guys who spoke with me is like, wow, I got my CEO in my living room every 2 weeks having a chat with me and telling me what's going on in the organization. So that is the kind of advantage that we need to take out of the current situation.
I mean, that's fantastic. I was having a conversation recently with someone who was, one of those people that's on a plane every 3 days and traveling, for their work. And he said to me that during the lockdown, when he was not able to leave his house, he met more people and caught up with more people in that 1 month period than he was ever able to do before in the same space of time, simply because at 3 o'clock in the afternoon he's in Beijing on a conference call with his team in Beijing, and 6 o'clock that same night he's on his on a call with his team in New York. And he was able to travel almost instantaneously and interact with them in a meaningful way. So thank you, Sarinder. I think that there's lots of other interesting things that we can take from that. Imani, I'm going to turn to you for a moment. We understand that many companies in Sri Lanka had to right size during the pandemic. And in the wake of the pandemic, companies are now looking at acquiring new talent. What do you think are the most sought after skills, for new recruits?
Niro, I don't really think that there's going to be any one thing that's going to be looked at in terms of, yes, post COVID-19, this is the skill that we need to sort of hire people based on. Things like having the right attitude in terms of conscientiousness, in terms of being present in what you do. All of those things which mattered before will matter now as well. And adaptability in terms of being IT savvy and being able to sort of be agile, all of that, which is things that we anticipated the future would bring, would still remain in terms of our recruitment strategies and what we look for in a person. But what we would probably be looking at is in terms of the mindset of people, in terms of how they, like if people come with the sort of perceived notion that I need a standard table and a standard working place where I can post all my photographs and have my own sort of, pictures and water bottle and all at my convenience, are things that we may we may have the hot desking sort of atmosphere, and people need to know that is the style of work that's going to come in the future. So having that mindset that this is going to be, so you might, as an aspiring young individual, have envisioned that corner office room with the view and all of that at one point, but you should know that it's not that. It's going to be different, and it doesn't mean that difference is bad. It means that it's just a new era, right? And that is the sort of person we will be looking for, who has the ability to be flexible in that way. So it's not just a skill, but it's an entire mindset shift that we want a person coming in to be able to embrace that and go ahead with it.
So I think that's great. Coming back to one of the things that Manjari mentioned earlier about inertia, people within the organization's resistance to change. I can appreciate that when you're looking for new recruits, looking for the right mindset, in the current context is important, and it's not a specific skill. But what about how changing the mindset of people within the organization already in order to make that paradigm shift? What is it that companies can do and individuals can do to encourage that shift and prevent inertia?
Okay, so one thing that I think we were also surprised, and human beings in that sense are very agile creatures. Some of the people that you thought, or you had a perceived idea that they will not be able to easily adapt to it, maybe because of age or tenure or something like that, surprisingly sort of, were the first to jump into it and say, yes, we can do it. Whereas you may have thought, okay, millennials, they'll grab it, they'll be able to do it overnight. They probably found it a little more daunting, right? So what you might find that people you have sort of perceived to think that they will adapt in a certain way may not. And what we did as an organization is to create more awareness in terms of how people can adapt and how and to sort of bring this about through the leadership itself, in terms of how we had more visibility of our leadership on team sort of arrangements, where they used the sort of platforms that were there and they actually walked the talk. So making sure that happens was one thing. And the other thing is, it's well and good saying, yeah, you have to come on Teams, you have to have this on a Zoom chat, etc. If you don't have the infrastructure that supports it to every level of people, then you need to get that worked out as well. So that's another thing that we're looking at, and it is understanding what is the sort of infrastructure that needs to be given to people to support them to be able to be flexible in the ways that we're looking at, and also the various personal challenges that people may have in terms of working from home or working in any other location apart from working on the office premise, and what are those challenges that each individual would have. Something that impacts me, yes, Arinder, just a minute. Something that impacts me will probably not impact someone else in the same scale. For me, it may be that, I have the challenge of having someone who I need to care for on a daily basis in terms of an aging parent, etc. But another person might have the challenge of a toddler who's always running around. So what are those? And being able to understand each person's situation on a case-by-case basis, and understanding how we can make changes towards improving their different remote working conditions.
Thank you very much.
Imani, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I was actually agreeing with you. It's
okay.
Very valid.
Okay, so I'll take the hand as an agreement. Okay.
No, I just want to add on to something that Imani was saying. I think that's a very, very valid point, because it really gives people that. When we started looking at, trying to empower women in the workplace, and we found that as people went up at the corporate ladder, we saw that the women leaving the workforce at senior levels was much higher than at junior levels. And one of the things is, in the job roles that we had traditionally, there was a lot of travel. and a lot of time taken in the work environment that kept people away from exactly what she was talking about, that flexibility and the unique situations each individual had. So this gives you a hell of a lot more freedom to be able to do that. So I'm just going to get off camera for a minute. My dogs are going nuts in the background. I'm going to let them out of the room and come back.
Some of the challenges from working from home or working remotely clearly demonstrated by Sarindu Nambu were there for all of our benefit.
I would call that a perk more than a challenge, having your around.
Both two ways of looking at it. Manjari, I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Imani earlier. In the wake of the pandemic, organizations are looking at recruiting new talent. What do you think, in your opinion, are the most sought after skills for new recruits? Manjari, you're going to have to unmute yourself. Thanks.
Yeah, it's done now. Sorry. As Iman said clearly, during the pandemic and even after the pandemic, what we need to see when we recruiting people is adaptability for changes and challenges. That is most important. The attitude of their willingness to change and take challenges. That is very, very important in my mind. And people who love technology, as I always tell you, like, there are a lot of people that we can find from the industry, out of the industry, who's very qualified in technology, who has learned technology, but you must have a passion to play with technology. Then only they will really grab the technology and grab the changes. So those are the main things that I would like when I go for recruitment. As recruiters, we need to find out people who's really positive attitudes towards challenges and changes, and who love technology, who can play with the technology, and who's very inventive.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manjari. Sarindu, I'm going to address a question to you. Because but I know that there's a pre-built answer already, because you've already said that it should be working from anywhere. But one of the things that has come up and been discussed is mental health and well-being. Because of long hours of working from home, there not being as much structure when you're working from home, so you tend to sort of let the work hours just amalgamate with normal life hours, so to speak, and that has also been a challenge that some people are trying to overcome, as well as the limited interactions during a work from home environment, leading to depression. So I just want to talk about that and see if you have any insights that you'd like to share, and also ways in which we can enjoy that flexibility, but make sure that we don't let it get to us. Sarindu.
Right. First thing, Niro, is working from home doesn't mean that you can intrude into somebody's life on a ad hoc basis. The structure is extremely vital. So what we have done is we've set in rules where people can only have their meetings during the fixed times that are given in the general workday, so 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever it may be. Anybody having meetings after that would have to have a really good reason for that. And as I told you, this system that we have started putting in place is very, very new. So it's an evolving system. What we are doing is we are starting to monitor on Teams. We use Teams for most of our meetings, or Zoom calls also. But on Teams, we are able to monitor what time meetings are being held. So if this is brought to our attention that people are having meetings late into the night, or Saturdays or Sundays or Boya days, then as leaders or as managers, or whatever you want to call it, we have to step in and make sure that those rules are adhered to. And that because it is important that people's privacy and their lives are given, that's of paramount importance. Second is mental health is an issue that we take very seriously, even in the general work environment. When we have 16,000 people working in our team and 99,000 people at MAS, almost 100,000 people at MAS. And one of the biggest issues we have is mental as well as physical wellness, because there are a lot of abuse situations at homes. And what's happened is during this lockdown period, some of those incidents, and especially because people are at home all the time, some of those incidents of spouse abuse, of mental trauma, all kinds of things have exacerbated. They've become worse. So what we have started doing is really monitoring those cases, having avenues for those people to communicate with, and then taking care of them on an individual basis. Also, the work from home, as I said earlier, and I want to say it again, it's not a fixed, you have to work from home for 365 days of the year situation. There is the opportunity for people to get out of their environment, and if they want to get out of their environment even every single day, they may not be able to come to the structured office that they have in the company that they work for, but they can certainly go and sit in another MAS location. They can certainly go and work in an approved co-working space, or if need be, they can even find another place that if they have a special need, we will take care of them. That is something that we are looking at and taking very seriously, because what we do not want to do here is injure anybody's health, mental or physical, by creating this work environment change.
I can fully appreciate that. One of the things that you touched on in your opening remarks was the cost benefit, both sides of flexible working. Now, if you look at a lot of the companies in Sri Lanka, many of them legacy infrastructure, which have they have either invested in or they in some way, shape, or form to cater to X number of people. Now, when you downsize the number of people attending office, either you have a lot of spare capacity or you're not able to utilize that space in a more meaningful way. How can companies overcome that legacy infrastructure, and how can they manage the costs? Because having all of the work facilities available for anyone who wants to work, and also allowing them to work from home or work from anywhere, and bearing some of those costs as well, in its simplest form, seems to increase cost. So how can that be managed better?
So I think the first thing is, I don't know whether there's going to be a short-term solution for a situation like that. If somebody has a 10-story building that they own and they're going to, reduce the number of people coming in, the first thing and the only thing that I can think of immediately is you can shut down 2 or 3 floors so that the cost of electricity, cost of air conditioning, all those things are taken out. The second thing is obviously the transportation. As far as, say, MAS is concerned, our group is concerned, we have taken a look at all our rental spaces. And what we are trying to do now is try and rationalize where we are going to, or what we are going to occupy and what we are going to move out of. So I think it has to be something, it's not going to be something that can happen overnight. But at Krida, what we have done is we had 2 big buildings that we've occupied. What we've done now is we are moving out of one building completely into a main building where everybody will be housed. And instead of having, as Imani was saying, a desk with your puppy dog and your cat and everybody's pictures all over the place, there'll be co-working spaces. And we'll have little safe units where people can lock their stuff up if they so desire and roll those around to any location in the office where they have a seat. So you, just like any other co-working space, you'll be able to book a seat and come and sit there and work if you're coming to work. What it's also done is it's freed up the other building. The other building, now we've opened it out to any other MAS company that wants to come in and occupy. So that way, if they are paying rent, if they don't own real estate and they are paying rent, then they will be paying rent to another company within the MAS group and not to somebody outside. So it's just things like that, Niro. I think there's going to be a lag period where people are going to try and figure out what they're going to do with their real estate. There's going to be a lot of real estate coming available if people follow this. But sadly, as we speak about this, while some companies are making a big effort, some people have gone almost 100% work from home. There are lots of companies that have gone right back to working full-time from their environments, and pretty much the new normal, I hate that term, the new normal is the old normal. So they've just gone right back to what it was. So it will be a stage-gated situation as far as real estate goes, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here for creative ideas to come out of those places.
Just anecdotally, Rai mentioned earlier that some of us are going to have sessions on training to cope with going back to the old normal.
Yeah,
Because
I'm one of those people. I don't want to go back to the old normal. I'm quite happy. As long as I can keep my dogs under control.
Imani, I want to talk to you a little bit about something that Sarinder and I discussed just now, which is the mental health and well-being, and get your thoughts on that as well.
So I think that's, if not one of the most important, it's also one of the most things that people know they need to address, but have sort of maybe been very cautious in terms of how they've addressed it. I think it definitely needs to be looked into, because we are all going through, one thing is the whole lockdown and being, and it was not even lockdown, it was curfew at one point where you couldn't even get out, and how you coped with handling that. And each one sort of manages things in different ways. Your personality is coming to being. Some of us are very extroverted and we want sort of interaction with with physical sort of interaction with people, etc. all the time. Some of us may adapt to it a little more easily. So understanding that and how it impacts the well-being of people and their mindset is important. And as well as in terms of when it comes to mental health and looking at ways in which you sort of adjust, you need to have constant dialogue with teams and understanding what each one goes through. And just it doesn't necessarily mean that someone who really adjusted to it in the first 3 months is going to be able to sustain it in the same way for the next 6 months. They would come across changes, because there would be things like, for example, the kids would go back to school and then you would have to drop them off at school, and then it would have been easier for you to get back to office rather than getting back home. So is that person then still told, no, you have to work from home as you were before? So some things like that are very simple, but it's just having that dialogue. And if you don't have that dialogue, you never realize that that change has now come about. And someone might not have been sort of, or might not have felt comfortable addressing it. Then in terms of understanding, even in terms of working hours, I think one of the sort of most powerful statements I've heard during this period is what they said is, rather than working from home, it's sleeping in office, which is what makes it so challenging, because I mean, you find that you switch off, but at the same time you may, and some of us, we don't really have a different workplace to sort of a dedicated workspace. You see your bed before you, and that's the same place that you're going to be sleeping, and when you get up you see the desk in front of you with your laptop on. So that sort of atmosphere, day in, day out, how it affects people and how it impacts people is different, and we need to be mindful of it. So in that sense, yes, mental well-being is something that we need to sort of discuss. And I don't think it's something that we needed to discuss only at the wake of this pandemic. Mental well-being and the well-being of individuals is something that, as corporates, we need to be having conversations on this, on our agenda, as a point in our sort of dialogue. So maybe the pandemic got us thinking about it a little more focusly.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Siren alluded to it earlier. In fact, Manjari mentioned it as well. All of these issues that we're discussing now were issues that were pre-existing COVID. It's just that COVID forced us to look at them and make the changes that we needed to make. And the issues, to a great extent are still there and still not necessarily solved, but we're at least aware of it and making those taking steps towards making those changes. You may not be a psychologist, but from someone that's involved with human resources, would you be able to tell us what the first sort of telltale signs are or would be, for someone who may be, depressed or suffering from mental health issues as a result from the working environment that they're in one way, shape or form, whether it's working from office or working from home, and what practical measures can be taken to address it and overcome it?
Okay, so yes, I'm not a practicing psychologist. I'm not someone who has studied in that area focusedly, but first of all, let me take it from my own personal experience. I think that is one of the things that I can sort of vouch for. In terms of being someone who likes interaction with people, and also dressing up, which gives me a high in my own sense. I found that day in, day out. It's not like I can just get on into my heels and get into my workspace here and feel good about it. I feel like a fool. So I wouldn't do that. And then not doing that in one way made me lose out on some part of me, which I felt I bring into what I do. So I needed to sort of look at ways in which I could focus in other ways. So it's about setting my space, the area around me, and making that more in terms of my person, bringing out my personality through that rather than what I wear. So looking at things like that. Then I'm also someone who enjoys those conversations between meetings. So, for example, after a meeting, what you might have wanted to say but you couldn't, or you wanted to say, or you wanted to have that dialogue with a friend of yours afterwards. When you miss out on that and you switch off and you leave the team's meeting, you're not going to have that opportunity again. So what we used to do is we would once the meeting finishes, we would call up and say, hey, what did you think of that? Or, what made you think of that? Those things really actually made a difference, because otherwise it's just from one meeting to the other. If there's no corridor talk, there is nothing that you would, usually take in as you, which in a way helps people who like that sort of camaraderie and that sort of conversation. So being mindful of things like that is important. I also found that when it came to managing teams, and I had the sort of novelty of actually managing a very relatively new team at the wake of the pandemic. So I had two people who had joined into the team, one in February and one in March, and I always say they sort of were the champions of this change. They brought about this change. So I was managing an entirely new team remotely. Being able to give them the feeling of what the organization brings about, the culture, all of that, looking at the various nuances in terms of even in terms of, we would put the video on, look at their appearance in terms of how they speak, etc., so that you engage with people, and looking at those signs was important, because rather than speaking to a picture or something like that. So we would comment on, for example, we would comment on the painting hanging on their wall, and we would have a conversation based on that, so that we could share a little more insight about ourselves. So I think it is. So there are little signs that you can look at and get an understanding of how people converse, whether people are actually making an attempt to engage in the conversation, or if it's one way. That's one of the things that you can really look at. And also in terms of the way people interact with each other, because you need to somehow. So sometimes we had Zoom sessions which had nothing to do with anything in terms of work, but it would be like just a party. You bring your own drink to your screen, and then have fun. So things like that, which sort of make it creating those spaces and making a mindset that you still feel is fun.
Thank you very much, Imani. Manjari, I'm going to just quickly ask you, I'm aware that Fairfirst has taken initiatives in job crafting, right? So we talked a little bit earlier about recruiting and skills that are being looked for. I'd like to know a little bit more about what Fairfirst is doing in terms of after recruiting, the job crafting, and how you're going about that.
Our approach towards job crafting stems directly from asking why that specific job function exists. And once again, we need to connect. We always connect that with the design thinking approach. Mainly, as a company, we always use design thinking concept when we do whatever the things we do, when we develop product, when we recruit people, and when we do job crafting as well. So those are the things, that is the main thing that we use, and we are always trying to see why this position is existing and how best we could craft this job and how best we could utilize this to the future. Not only to fill the gap in the current level or the current position, we always think about future, how we craft this job to the future.
Sorry, thank you very much. Just a quick question in follow-up to that. When job crafting, is it something that the management does as a team, or is it, do you do job crafting with the individual? How exactly do you go about it?
Depend actually, let's say it's depend on the situation, right? We as a team, Fairfirst always work as a team, and if we need, if there is a necessary, if there's a requirement, we always get together as a team and we look at each and every job role and what are the things that we need to change, fine-tune, uplift, and what are the things that we need to do. But each and every line manager has the authority and they have enough freedom to change, look at their department, look at their operation, and do whatever the changes they need. So it's not hard and fast rule, but they can take that, they have that freedom to go with whatever the changes that they need, think as suitable.
Okay, great. So before we move on to the questions from the audience, I'd like to take an opportunity to ask each one of the panelists to specifically, give key takeaways on inspiring metamorphosis. Are there any key takeaways that you can share with us to inspire metamorphosis? Manjari, given that you're online right now, may I ask you to give your key takeaways how to inspire metamorphosis?
Basically, the main thing we need to keep in our mind is this situation, we never know how long it will continue. Day by day it's changing, hour by hour it's changing. So we need to accept that this situation is changing, and there's what we call the past normal and the new normal. Maybe another new normal will come soon. So whatever the things we do, we need to think about the future. We need to think about all our employees, not specific job role, not specific duties, but as a company, as a whole, as a nation, what we need to see is to address all the issues which comes in future, not focus on the real situation as we have now, but we have to think about far away. And listening is very important. When a person comes with a question, you need to listen to them, because each and every question matters. I always telling, each and every question matters. As Imani said, as Sandra said, different people have different issues. Maybe domestic violences, maybe internet connectivity, maybe their appearance. So everything matters. So what we need to take is, we need to treat each and every individual in the same manner, and we need to listen to them very carefully. And they have a value and we have to respect them.
Thank you very much. Imani, same question to you. Key takeaways to inspire metamorphosis.
So I would think that the metamorphosis in you, in how you look at it, should not be a thing of keeping up with the Joneses. It's about what matters to you also. Because sometimes what has been going on is with social media these days, everything that someone has been doing during lockdown and is posted up, and you feel a bit inferior if someone has been sort of baking sourdough or sour bread, and then someone else has sort of completely transformed their entire household, and here you are we were still in your PJs having your breakfast every day. So that sort of thing of keeping up with the Joneses and thinking, okay, Shakespeare during the Depression came up with King Lear, what am I going to do, is not the thing. It's about what impacts you and how you are going to change to be a better version of you as a result of all the learning that you have experienced during this time. And so if it is even just something like, cleaning your cupboard, which you haven't done for the last 6 years, you might as well have started it during this time, and that would be a change for yourself. So, and that would in one way have a ripple impact on how you feel about yourself, which will you will be able to lend itself to what you do and how you look at yourself. So I would look at it in terms of looking at it from an individual perspective and seeing how you can leverage on that to bring out the best version of you to your business and what you do.
Thank you, Imani. Sarinder?
I think Imani nailed it there. My motto during the whole lockdown was be a better version of me. And that's what I strove very hard to do. I don't know whether I achieved it, but tried. In this metamorphosis, I think the most important thing is going to be change is on hyperdrive. And I think rather than fight change, embrace change and grow and look for opportunities within that change. That's what's most important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, panelists. Rai, I think it's time to address some of the questions that the audience have sent in. May I hand over to you?
Sure. Thank you, Niro, and thank you to each of our panelists. Those were some very interesting insights, and also put forward in an entertaining way. I must say that was, kept me smiling right throughout. So we did have quite a few questions that came in, and of these questions, quite a lot have been answered in the process of what was shared anyway. So I just have sort of clubbed together the rest of the questions that didn't kind of get picked up there. So one interesting question, this one is for you, Sarinder. Should companies look at different pay scales when you introduce work from anywhere or work from home? Is this something that should be thought of?
If you are expecting people to do the same job, if you are expecting people to be available for the same duration of time as they were in working from an office environment, my answer is no. If by chance you want to shift to a gig environment where you're giving people jobs for particular tasks that they work part-time, and that's another opportunity that comes up in this environment, then yes. Then you can specifically say you're working 2 days a week, this is your task, here's what you're getting paid. But if they're doing the same job that they're doing right now, regardless of where they work from, they get the same pay. Pay adjustments have been made across the country right now in corporates, but that has nothing to do with working from home. That has to do with business going from 100 to 0 almost overnight, and there being absolutely no cash flow into companies for almost a 2 to 3 month period. And during that time, the most important thing was to protect your cash. And that is why pay scales were reduced, or people had to take pay cuts, just to ensure the longevity of the organization. That's why pay cuts were made. Not because the company was like, oh no, these guys are working from home, we're going to cut their pay. That had nothing to do with it. Nobody knew whether the lockdown was going to be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year. Nobody knew. So those radical measures had to be taken for the survival of organizations. Going forward, I think we have to now start getting rational and sensible about how we do our remuneration.
Interesting point. In fact, that's something that when we did a deep dive into work from home as one of our topics in the previous sessions, we had ILO country director, Ms. Simrin Singh with us, and she specifically said, she kind of pointed out exactly what you said, that if you are expecting a person to do the same job role, where they do it from has no relevance. They still need to be provided with the same pay and the same perks if you're expecting the same sort of contribution and productivity from them. Thanks, Harinder. So let me move on to, there's a question here for Manjari. Manjari, do you think, or how do you think working from home or working remotely, how do you think it will affect the job market? Will the rate of employment grow, or will there be job losses? Like Sarinder said, will we see something like a gig economy sort of blooming versus full-time work? I do know that the International Labour Organization, was it yesterday yesterday in fact, released a report saying that their new numbers, the report they did in May had a particular number, but the new numbers are now looking at something in the region of 400 million in terms of full-time job loss. So they specify as full-time. So full-time work, the equivalent of full-time job losses is 400 million. How do you see this for us here in Sri Lanka? Have we got you on mute by any chance?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, right, okay. In Sri Lanka, what we see is working from home. Yes, it's a good concept. Yeah, we have enough freedom with our company policies and all, but there's no right or wrong answers. We can't say that just because of working from home, I don't see that job market is going down, because there are people who likes for different cultures and different practices. They might like to work from home or anywhere from the world. Like we have some employees who attached to our Colombo call center, they're working from Jaffna, working from Kurunegala, working from Gampaha, like that. We have some technical executive who might have experience with Fairfirst, who do inspection just sitting at home, and you just have to take your smartphone and take pictures, and they capture your accident pictures while staying at home. So it doesn't say that working from home or the situation will drop the job market. It's depend on how we see and how each and every individual see the change and how fast they adapt the changes. So I can't directly say that yes, there's an impact, negative impact, or there's a positive impact, but it's all depend on the individual and how companies act and adapt those changes. That's what I believe from my point.
Thanks a lot, Manjari, for that answer. I think it was kind of captured the essence of what's going on. Imani, this one is for you. Any suggestions on new performance evaluation measures and a norm when you consider this sort of hybrid work situation? Interesting one there.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things, rather than it being new, is something that has been, once again, it has been around for some time, but maybe people will have to use it more and sort of adapt to it more. It is continuous performance management. So continuous feedback, rather than the systems that we've been used to, where we have a mid-year, we have a end appraisal, etc. We will have continuous feedback being given, and that is done not only in these standard one-on-one meetings, but you have it being given on a continuous basis, which is captured through a system, so that you have the evaluation of it whenever you need to sort of take account of it. So I feel that would be more in terms of the trend that will continue even as a result of what has happened, because for example, we had just moved into a system which enabled this, and when we hit the pandemic at its peak in April, we were in the midst of performance calibrations and everything, and we found that we could do it in a very smooth way because of the fact that we had a system which enabled us to be able to do even our calibration committees, which we call career committees, online. So that sort of continuous feedback and that continuous performance culture, performance management culture, is what I feel will be the future.
So there you go. Basically, as much as employees need to adapt to the changing environment, leadership also needs to adapt, as we were talking about. So one thing that definitely needs to be looked at is how we evaluate performance. As I said at the start, and as my email to each of you said, work is not a place you go to, but it's what you do, and performance needs to be measured by the output. So this question is actually for each of you, Niro, you included. All four of you represent very large companies with very large human capital, very large quantity of human capital. So this is an interesting question. It's from Romeshan, who says, I don't know what the organization is, but he or she, sorry for that, says our organization did a survey during the curfew period where we found that women were more stressed than men about the future, and that they were also finding it difficult to work from home. has the experience been different in your organization? Interesting question. I think, Sarinder, would you like to start?
Of course. So this is actually a very valid one, because a lot of people, this goes back to my favorite topic of gender equality in the workplace, and also how people's career, women's development in the workplace. A lot of the pressure that comes, officers can create equality, flexible time, work from home, all those things. But in most South Asian countries, and if you take Sri Lanka, one of the things that when women go home, they are still expected to play the lead role: mother, daughter, wife, housekeeper, homework taker, garden caretaker, whatever. They have to manage the domestic affairs and everything. So there's a lot of pressure put on women by the home environment. And I think if women are to succeed in careers, their family environment plays a huge role in how successful they are. And in a situation where a woman has a stressful work load to carry, a very senior level, or any level for that matter, if they have work to do and they go home and they have to sit in an environment where their husband is saying dinner is not cooked, the kids are not bathed, and that kind of thing is going on in the background, that creates an extremely stressful environment and a very unfair situation. So that is something those are some of the situations where we have to address and then create work spaces or areas where those people can go and work at outside the home environment. But again, I think when it comes to successful women, and there are 3 successful women on this panel, I'm sure you've got a lot of support from a home environment to be able to continue your careers, to be able to go forward. Because if that didn't happen, invariably what happens is the woman has to then make the sacrifice and stay at home and give up their career. And I've seen too many very, very capable, extremely talented, extremely intelligent women having to sacrifice their careers because they have to play that role, or they're just made to feel guilty by society or their families that they are not playing that expected role.
Thanks, Sarinder. Thanks a lot. Yeah, Imani, go ahead.
That one of the interesting things I read when it came to this sort of the gender challenges each gender would have, and one thing that came up, and one of my friends actually brought light to this, was that women have what we call smaller ticket items, but on a larger frequency of in terms of what we do in terms of work when we are working at home, whereas men would have, and I'm not just generalizing this, I know there are a lot of people in terms of, there are a lot of men who also have do a lot of work in terms of the home environment, but in general, men would have what we call larger ticket items. So for example, if it is mowing the lawn, you do it once a month or once a week if you are paranoid, and then you don't need to do it again for another month, right? But women, if you are at home and you have a toddler who has a cold, you have to be behind that little boy or girl with a handkerchief, making sure that they are, not dribbling around and walking and, infecting anyone else, or being uncomfortable. So that is just one part of it. So this smaller ticket at a higher frequency versus larger ticket items, which are done less frequently, increases the level of stress. And that in a way is why you have the sort of varied stress levels of gender. So I thought that was a very interesting take in terms of how we look at gender roles at this time.
So I think it's pretty awesome that that large organizations, large conglomerates in this country are actually looking at these factors, taking data such as this and using it. So, like what Sarinder was saying, there's actual change happening in the workplace that is looking to empower women, that is looking to empower not just women, but equality. I think it's not just about saying empowering women, it's about ensuring equality across the board. And I'm pretty wowed that I'm talking to, a set of individuals from large conglomerates who are actually looking at taking these learnings realistically and applying them across the board. Manjari, what are your thoughts on the question that we just asked in that sense?
Yeah. Actually, I'm totally agreeing with Sarinder. We also did a survey, small survey, and we introduced some 10-point work from home policy. Soon we introduced the policy, we sent all user mail. I, myself and my team got around 40-45 calls, SMSs, WhatsApp messages from staff. Majority is female. They really appreciated the effort that you have put in place to regularize or standardize work from home. What their concerns was, yes, Manji, it's okay, we can assign all the duties that given by our supervisors, but it's really difficult to manage home because need to pay attention to my husband, need to pay attention to my kids, we have to cook, clean, wash, everything. It's just working from home and work at home combination. They really struggle to manage those things, and they really appreciate the effort that we put in. It's most of the calls from women and female staff, and they really wanted kind of a break and to draw a line between work from home and work at home. So it's really an important point that if we need to continue, we need to really look at that aspect as well. Yes, we can create a balanced culture, the gender balancing situation at the office, at the workplace, but it's not their home. So that should come from their families, that the guidance, encouragement should come from their families, then only they can perform better.
Interesting, very interesting point of view. And like I said again, I'm just wowed that I'm talking to a C-suite that is so aware of what's going on, on a one-on-one individual basis, and is willing to look at those problems and try to build. This is inspiring Metamorphosis. This is inspiring your teams, and I'm really grateful that we have you guys on this conversation. Niro, you're not going to escape this question. I would like you to answer as well. What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with Manjari and Sarinder. I think the societal pressures on women in the workforce and women in leadership makes it that much more challenging. Expectations from the family are something that's almost unavoidable. And something that I think has to be managed. It's got to be something that has to be done at a home level, so that both partners and family are they're cognizant of the challenges that their parents are facing. Both mum and dad have to deal with this, and both mum and dad have work to do as well as taking care of the home and taking care of the family. And I think that paradigm shift is yet to really happen in Sri Lanka to a great extent across a broad spectrum. But I think it is happening much faster than people expect. I think it is, to a great extent, in many examples, already happened. But it's a change that's ongoing, and I think as we started this conversation, the only thing constant is change, and this evolution of roles for both men and women in the workforce and at a home are going to constantly evolve as work and life evolve together. So it's a process of change, and I think it's about understanding that change.
Thanks. I love the insights that all of you shared. For me personally, so each one of you works for a particular organization. In my case, I work for a chamber. So my board of directors are from diverse organizations. I have representation of 12 or 13 different organizations which I'm working with. And that learning is something that the learning from each of these organizations is something that we like to take, so that we can be an example and be sort of a catalyst for the change across the board with all the other organizations that we work with as in our member organizations. Something that I personally put on my profile. So for instance, I was hounding all of you for your profiles to use in the introduction. Something that I have at the bottom of my profile, which a couple of people asked me, why do you do this? Are you, what is the messaging that you're trying to bring across? And it was very simple. At the last line in my profile, or my personal profile says, mom to 3 teenagers and 2 dogs. Because I think that it's an essential to be understood that is what your life is. It's it's not only the challenges that you're going to be faced with as a woman in the workplace or a man in the workplace. There are so many single male parents out there as well. But it also, I think, brings an understanding of the fact that you are capable of multitasking, of managing different diverse issues and needs and wants, which is the same thing that you need to bring to your workplace and to your work environment when you're leading rather than managing, which was what our conversation was all about. Leading and managing, leading rather than managing, a combination of both, and what it takes for us to ensure that agility, that mindfulness, that adaptability happens in our workplaces as we continue in this conversation of sort of bouncing back in a sustainable trajectory. So that kind of ends my little personal spiel on this. Thank you, of course, to every single one of our viewers here on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. Our panelists, your sharings were invaluable, your insights were invaluable, and I'm sure we all have a lot, not only the viewers, but we ourselves have a lot of takeaways from this conversation here. Thank you, of course, to our partners, Fairfirst Insurance and the Daily FT. To our viewers, a reminder, do join us next week. We'll be taking a crossover to the deep end, where we're going to sort of delve deep into policy and see what sort of effect it has on your business continuity and recovery plans. Details, as always, via the AmCham Bulletin, the WhatsApp broadcast, and of course the Daily FT. Don't forget, this session goes up on our YouTube channel, AmCham Sri Lanka, and of course, in case you've missed any of our previous sessions, I encourage you to catch up on those as well. Please do watch, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Of course, it helps finance these resources so that we can continue bringing you as much knowledge hub resources as we can FOC. Once again, thank you to each and every one of you. Till next week, it's a friendly reminder from the AmCham team. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and Ayubowan.